Alrighty, back up north at the old shop. It's a little colder up here. I was down south for the last few weeks. I got to play once and hit a range a couple times outdoors and actually see some ball flights, which is great. I just did a quick test to make sure the microphones were working. First swing of the day felt fantastic. As you can see from that beautiful ball mark there. It's got a pitching wedge. See if we can keep it going. Just warming up. Actually pretty sore. I hadn't worked out the almost 3 weeks I was gone, and I worked out. I kind of got back yesterday, worked out yesterday, feeling it today. Nice smooth pitching wedge. Leave out $1.25. Felt pretty good. Exact same spot, exactly the same strike. That one. First one. That's usually my strike right there. Just a hair toe bias, kind of the toe bias side of the sweet spot. Felt nice, real good divot to ball ratio. I actually towed that one a little too much though, even though it felt good. It's a little toey. I'm just gonna wipe these off, start fresh, not have to look at that. These old crappy range balls, one I'm about to hit. If you've ever watched my videos, you know they leave those nice imprints, those nice ball marks on the club face. They feel rock hard. They don't sound the best. Tried to be a little more favor the heel a little bit on that one. See, was definitely pushing the heel side a little more. Basically right on the sweet spot. But if you look at my wear pattern, I basically like, if this is dead center, I kind of like, mine is like just a couple millimeters over. And also the way I have my clubs weighted and the weighting in my shaft, like there's a weight in the hosel where the shaft goes in. I took that out and pushed more weight to the toe. So I pushed the center of gravity on my irons as much as I could really towards the toe. Although it is tough to move an iron CG very far, you're lucky to get 2 millimeters out of it. But for what it means, these are set up to be as toe bias as I could get them as far as pushing the sweet spot over. Because that's generally my strike, is ever so slightly favoring the toe. Felt good. There's also a Shrixon, not a range ball. Same strike, right over the last. Ooh, my shoulder. I have bad shoulders, not from the swing, but I've dislocated my shoulders. I think this one twice, this one like 3 times. Broken my collarbone. I do a lot of stuff besides golf, like skateboard and dirt bike and jump off of cliffs into water and bridges. Not afraid to get hurt, but getting hurt in golf don't always mix. Another one felt pretty good there. Might have been a little bit on the pro thin side, is what we used to call it when we were a kid. So basically, you can thin a ball. Like if your club, usually wouldn't take a divot. If you catch one thin, you just kind of blade it. What we would call the pro thin is when you still take a divot and it's after the ball like it should be, but it's a little too far after the ball. Basically, the real opposite of catching it fat. When because fat, your divot starts kind of behind the ball or right at the ball. The pro thin is the divot's too far after the ball. That's what happened there. Still would have been a divot. What's this mat mean? It should be just left of center. Yeah, Yeah. Yeah, so this really should be basically center of the net, right at that guitar is about center. It's everything's open just a little bit. I'm trying to be a little fade bias with these swings. My swing was I was hitting a lot left, just kind of a little more of a hook ball flight than I'm used to. I try to keep it pretty straight. That one felt sweet. That felt real sweet. Yeah, I talk about a lot of the same things in my videos, but that's because those are the things that are constant. Like, so my videos are mostly for myself. YouTube is a free place to store my videos. I always have to delete stuff off my phone so I have enough storage, yada yada. But I do enjoy teaching and I enjoy helping people, so that's part of it also. It adds a little bit of pressure for myself hitting on camera with no cuts and all that. Um, but I say a lot of the same things over and over because those are the things in the last 30 years of playing this game, studying this game, learning, playing competitively, the things that I've learned that actually work. And I follow a lot of other golf related content, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram, whatever. And a lot of it's just, whatever the trendy swing tip is. It's funny, I was going through this one creator's page and he had a short talking about you have to do this to hit your irons well. And it was basically talking about holding off and getting the grip moving left. And the short right before that is if you're struggling with a fade or a slice, basically it was putting a golf ball, the old classic drill. This is a great drill, by the way. Put it about 6 inches in front of the ball and a ball's width inside of it, which forces you to come from the inside, have that nice into out swing path and hit a draw. So it's like you literally had two shorts, one after the other, that contradict each other. And there are always the clickbait titles with "you have to do this," the secret move to hit every shot flush, yada yada. I try not to do that because I'm not really in it for the views. That would be cool, to make money one day from videos, but it's not my overarching theme. Isn't simply to be a creator. That was the launch. That was a Shrixon instead of a range ball. It felt like a marshmallow compared. But anyway, that's why I'm redundant with a lot of the drills and things I talk about. Like how many times have I talked about this old drill? I keep this old Nike pitching wedge here with this driveway marker alignment stick, just jammed right down the grip. About 1.5 feet roughly sticking out the end. And this drill is one of the few drills that will help almost every golfer. Because first thing I notice so it forces you to set up with this nice, forward shaft lean where the club and my hand are, basically an extension of one another, basically how they would be at impact. Maybe not quite there at impact, but closer. The mistake I see a lot of people make is they set up and they're like this. They're like adding loft to the club, their hands back. So basically they got to start here and get here to impact. So that's a big difference compared to if you're already starting with a little bit of shaft lean, then your impact's here. You're just setting yourself up already for closer to where you want to be. That's one thing it does before you even swing the club. It sets you up in a better spot for a lot of people. But then also, big issue is people. So the proper pressure shift in the golf swing, this is a big mistake a lot of people make. A lot of people think it's everything back and then everything forward. But no, it's as you're turning back, by the time I'm here, less than halfway back, all the weight that's going to be going back is already back by this point. And then as I get to 3/4 of the way, almost to the top, 80, 90% of the way to the top, I'm starting to fall into my lead side already. I'm getting a little head start because the club's moving really fast. I can't move my body as fast as the club. So you want to get a little bit of a head start with your pressure shift. So basically my pressure shift is starting. Now the club's changing direction and I've already got that head start, getting all my weight onto my front foot. And that's where the squat, as people call it, comes from, is you're not literally just squatting. You're not trying to squat. You're just, you're relaxed and kind of falling into that front foot. And if anything, more towards the heel than the toes, because you don't want to be driving up off the ground like this. If anything, you want it more towards the heel, that weight. But again, it forces you to get your weight forward and not flip. And a big mistake is people try to pick the ball up in the air, and you can see the shaft would hit me. Boom, if I did that. So I got to get forward, learn to have forward shaft lean. I need to learn to compress the ball, have a good turn through the ball. I can have forward shaft lean and not shift my weight, and it's still going to hit me. So it really forces you to do a lot of good things. The only downfall to it, well, before I get to the downfall, you can also use it. It's really great for checking your positions, like your backswing position, like boom. I want this whole thing to be about parallel with the target line. I don't want it too far inside. If anything, it's okay if it's a little outside. I kind of feel sometimes like I tend to bring it inside is my habit. So I like to feel like I'm taking it just barely outside my hands. And then at the top, I like to feel like I'm letting just the weight of the club fall. That's the feel, not the real. So if I were setting up to this ball, where you want to be is you get to the top. So the P positions, P1 through 10, P stands for position. P1 is setup. P2 is what I was just talking about. The leading edge is matching your spine angle. It's about parallel over your foot line. It's basically right on my foot line. It's not out here. It's not too close. It's basically parallel or just outside, like that. It's just a turn to the top with your chest. Get to the top. So, sorry, I was talking about the P's. P2, P3, P4 is the top. And again, I can see it's just good for alignment and checking your positions. I can see that's nice and in line with my arm. It's not across the line here. It's not laid off that way. It's in a good position to just turn into the ball, and it's square from there. So P6 is the top, P4 is the top. And P5, as you're coming down, the ideal plane is this, basically pointing at the ball. Most amateurs have a habit of being too steep, where that would be pointing inside the ball. The pro mistake is to get a little too flat. You can get away with it, but if you start getting too flat, you end up having to flip to catch up. You hit a lot of hooks or push shots. So that perfect plane is the butt of your grip is pointing at the ball. And this just kind of helps with alignment. So P4, then to P5, and then P6 is very similar to P2, where you want it about parallel, except for P2. Ideally, if it's either parallel or just outside the line. With P6, you want it either parallel or maybe even just inside the line, just a little bit shallower, if anything, is the side you want to favor, is the shallow side. And then from there, it's just to turn into the ball, which is impact. P7, where all my weight's on my front foot. I'm not standing up. One of the worst things people can do is so it's not simply just lifting your heel. I would suggest, especially with a pitching wedge and your irons, to not lift your heel. The way it's forward, my foot might start to roll, but I'm not lifting my heel until after impact. So you're kind of, get over the ball. So you're kind of here at impact. You can see this front hip, my butt is cleared. I didn't stand up into the ball. I'm more, boom, right there, heel down. Now, a player like Justin Thomas, who does lift their foot early, especially with a driver, you're going to be more likely to do it. But his pressure, here's the difference where a lot of people go wrong, is as you're lifting that, he's lifting and he's still, the front hip's clearing. This knee is moving into the other one here. Where people go wrong is they start to lift up and it goes out towards the golf ball. If you look, if I'm just here, that just wants to shift everything about a half golf ball closer to the, about a half golf ball's width closer to the ball, obviously where the heel and the hosel is, where you're going to be likely to shank it. And if you actually go back to last weekend's Genesis Open, when Tiger Woods shanked that shot, if you watch all of his iron shots, all of his, especially his mid short irons, all of his iron shots, he was, somewhere similar to here. On that one shot, his knee was further out than normal, and he shanked it. He chalked it up to a back spasm, but it's so important to get the right pressure shifts and do the right thing. And you're not just rotating. So instead of rotating, which is kind of what it looks like on camera, really more the feel of it. If you were to imagine your pockets or your hips, or imagine your pockets as your hips, really more the feel is this pocket is just going straight back. You turn, and then your front pocket is going straight back, which of course has this rotational look, but rotating a lot can get people kind of standing up and just kind of doing it not quite right. So a better feel really is just pocket back, which creates the rotation, but it's just a more effective visual and swing thought, really. Pocket back, and we're talking about this training aid. So P7 is impact, P6, coming down the line. That's where this training aid becomes an issue, is you kind of have to learn to hit these little punch shots. You can't, the last couple positions you can't quite get to because this will clip you, but you can hit balls with it. It's just not full follow through shots. It's more of just those little punch shots, which are great. Anyway, that's one of the best training aids and something I've talked about multiple times. Love that training aid. And if you're making changes to your swing, don't be afraid to hit the ball bad for a while. Really stick with it. And a lot of times you really have to exaggerate feels. Like the number of times I've worked with a player who comes over the top, I kind of almost healed that one a little bit. One of those range balls, you how funky it was. Felt like a pretty good strike though, but it was ever so slightly a little favoring the heel. What was I saying? Oh, don't be afraid to exaggerate things. The number of times, one of the most common things is people, just bring the club straight inside off the ball too fast. They have no, you want to be relaxed, take the club back pretty smooth with good rhythm. You should feel real easy, like when my club basically gets to here, obviously I don't want the club to drop from its own weight, but the amount of strength it takes to keep that club from dropping is how much pressure are in my hands. You don't want to be holding it so tight. Like in my normal swing, when I get to here, someone could come up and yank this club out of my hand. There's a lot of it, there's no tension. I'm very relaxed, and that's how you create the power, is being relaxed. What was I getting at though? Oh, exaggerating moves. The amount of people who snatch the ball, or snatch the club rather, quick to the inside and then come over the top, so their swing path ends up cutting across it. They're right-handed, and going way left is their swing path. You can see how that swing path would be moving left, which cuts across the ball, putting spin on it that makes it slice. A lot of it, that's why slicers, so many slicers, they aim left, they try to pull the ball back to the left because their ball always misses right. Slicers almost never have an open club face. Their face is almost always a little closed to the target or square to it because it's their swing path being so far left creating the slice. So basically the golf ball is going to start where the face is. So if this face is straight at the target, but it's cutting across it, in this direction, way left, it's still, especially with like a longer club, the less loft, the more this really has the effect is the 3-iron. So if my face is pretty square, but it's cutting across to the left, the ball's still going to start pretty straight. The swing path was way this way, and the ball was spinning like this. So that would have had this slice spin on the ground. But the face was still square. It's not an open face that generally causes people's big slices. And that's where the mistake is they're all swinging left, trying to roll their hands roll their hands through. So, but no matter how much you roll your hands through, you're never able to straighten out your slice until you just hit it straight left. Because what's happened is you've closed your face so much, it actually matched up to your left swing path. So to fix that, talked about this before, 6 inches in front of the ball, about a ball's width back, 6 inches forward, ball's width inside the ball, close everything just a little bit, maybe hood the club face just a hair, swing out to the right. And that would have been a big draw. I mean, I just chipped it. I didn't hit it very hard, and it's a pitching wedge. So, of course, it's not going to go, hook like crazy like a driver would. But this applies to all clubs. And what really helps if you're snatching the club away, pulling it to the inside, second ball again, just kind of set it a little behind the ball you're going to hit. And your goal is to roll this ball back as slowly as you possibly can in a perfectly straight line to start your swing. You want to exaggerate when you're practicing. If I'm swinging at let's just turn it into a 1 through 10 scale. If I'm swinging really fast at a 10 and I want to get down to a 7 or an 8, I need to practice doing 3s and 4s as far as the speed. So, you want to practice going extra slow. Now, I'm not a big proponent I think it's a great drill to do something like set up, take it back, check your positions. Okay, I like those. And hit the ball. I like drills like that where you pause at the top. Solid ball strikes. But as far as a pause swing, it can work for some people. But I think it just throws all your natural rhythm and timing off because the game is so much about rhythm. And that's why another one of the best things I think every player can do is just learn to swing back and forth rhythmically. And there's a mirror behind the phone, so I can see myself, and I'm just trying to, practice getting a nice shoulder turn, nice back swing, and just letting it fall. And if I'm working on something, I like to exaggerate the moves. Like again, most people slice it. A great feel if you want to shallow the club. Literally, first learn a proper how to take the club back, one-piece takeaway as it's called. What that means essentially, if I had a laser pointer on my chest pointing down towards the club, or you could say my hands, say the laser pointer is pointing at my hands from my chest. The issue a lot of people have is they'll swing like this. And that might look like a halfway decent backswing to the untrained eye, but that laser pointer is pointing right here. And my hands are up here. What you want is, as I'm turning off the ball for the first at least half of the backswing roughly, you're using your chest to take everything back. Because look, I can Go like this, where it's just my hands. Here, into a little better position. Go like this, which looks like a pretty good position, but if I were to just turn to the side, you see how the club's way to the side of me? That's incorrect. If I were to do it correctly, and then I turn to the side, the club's directly in front of me. There's a lot less arm movement in the swing than people think. There's no arm movement, no arm movement, no arm movement. I've turned my chest about as far as they can go. That's the arm movement right there. It's basically from here to there. Because look, if I unturn my chest, I've only moved the club this far with my arms and hands. No arms, no arms, no arms, arms. And then you unwind, and that's how you get to release the club, because you're unwinding, and then boom, you get to release it. This is the arms in the swing. It's just that. L to L, as it's called. See how this arm makes an L? This arm makes an L, essentially. That's the arm swing. The mistake is people are doing this. And it can look okay to the untrained eye. There's just no power and consistency in this. You've totally separated from your body. Because right now, my chest is turned here. In my normal swing, my chest would be turned here. There's a big difference, even though it might not look the same. So that is the key, is learning the one-piece takeaway. Getting to the top. And if you want to shallow is where I was getting, is that's the first part, being able to take away. So as I'm getting to the top, I'm falling into my front foot. All my pressure is going into my front foot. And it honestly almost feels like if you were to not do the release, like you're just kind of dropping the club. As Mo Norman would say, or like a Ben Hogan, you're almost trying to hit your trail heel with the club head is the feel. Literally just back here, falling into the front, and I'm letting the weight of the club tip back and just hit here. But what happens is obviously you're not going to do that. So as the momentum and your pressure shifts and you start to swing, that just turns into this little bit of a shallowing move that you see all the pros do. Because if I literally just swing back in one line and then turn, the club wants to come over the top a little bit. It's just how the body is. So to swing on one plane back, one plane down, you kind of have to shallow a little bit to make up for your body's rotation. Because you're square with the ball at address, but at impact, you're more open. So basically that amount is kind of the amount you have to shallow to stay on the same plane. And also, when you go back, you want to keep your hands basically as far away from you as you can. Big mistake people make is they kind of get into here, they let their arm collapse, they get too much arms. Just feel this arm stay straight. And like everything's loose, but it stays straight and you're just turning with your chest. Nice big chest turn where the back of the tag on your shirt is pointing at the target. Or this shoulder, your lead shoulder, is pointing at the ball. That's the feel. It's going to be a little outside the ball, like closer to where that rubber tee is, but the feel should be, I basically actually set up to it. So, I turn, and I should feel like my shoulder, this front shoulder, is pointing at the ball. You don't want to stand up and get it out there. And then again, at impact, I want to feel like this shoulder is pointing at the ball. You don't want to be standing up out there. These are all constants. A lot of people are under this misconception that if you just have perfect swing mechanics, you're magically going to hit the ball flush every time. And I hate to break it to you, besides these basic fundamentals that I talk about, like the way you shift your pressure, taking it back in one piece, there are a few things that make it easier, but there's a lot of ways to do it, and there's no just positions that make you hit the ball consistently flush. That's just a lot of practice and straight up hand-eye coordination. But swing dynamics help in the sense that you can generate the most efficient power moving the least amount of muscles. And that's why your pressure shift's important, because you want to get your pressure shifted early. So the low point, the lowest point in the swing arc, if your swing is basically drawing a circle on an angle on an arc, the lowest point of that circle you want in front of the golf ball. When the club's hitting the ball, you still want your club traveling in a downward angle. So that's why you're starting essentially at the ball, but you get more weight forward. So the low point is in front. And I've always had my eye directly on the golf ball. I'm looking physically at the ball, but my focus is in front of the ball. In a drill you can do, you're outside on the grass, is use a golf tee. Here's a penny. I'm going to put a penny about 2 golf balls widths in front of my ball. And I'm looking at the ball, but my focus is more so I'm going to try to hit that penny with my golf club. Those were both launched. That was crispy. That felt real good. I'm going to clean these. They're getting a little scattered. But that's basically my swing thought. I've used that for years, and that is a great swing thought. Essentially imagining that penny, or imagining, where I want my club to enter the ground. I'm not looking there. I hope that makes sense. My eyes are physically on the golf ball, but I'm trying to strike in front of it. To the 7-iron. Oh, Healy also. I'm always a little shocked when I catch one off the heel, because I'm usually very toe biased as a player. An old feel of mine is actually, I almost feel like I'm trying to heel it a little bit. That's been a feel I've used, so now that these grips are cold, I left them cold last night. Let's grab the 7-iron. Enough of those. Here's another great drill for staying connected, helps with the flying elbow, really could help everyone. And they make a thing for this, but I just made this myself. What I think would work great is a mini basketball, because it would have a little bit more grip. This thing's very slippery on my sweater. But anyway, you essentially just pinch a ball or something around this size in between your forearms. You can see it keeps my forearms connected. It's starting to slip out. Keeps my forearms connected at the top and me in a real good position where this isn't flying, or I would drop it. If I overswing, I would drop it. It keeps me from getting any kind of like a chicken wing on my follow through. A lot of people have that chicken wing on their follow throughs right here. It keeps you good and connected. You can hit balls with this. Slipped out in the backswing. It works better if I'm wearing a t-shirt. It's a little grippier on the old flesh. But that's why I'm saying a mini basketball would work better. Or if maybe a stuffed animal, if you have a stuffed animal around that side, just something you need to pinch. Because it could be a little smaller, and maybe just it would be a little closer to your hands. If it were a little bigger, it might go a little almost to your elbows. So there's a little room for slightly different sized things there. That's another great drill that you can just make at home. I'm sure you can find something. All right, first not pitching wedge of the day. Working on changing my stance, my backswing. I tend to get a little too much leg. I kind of start turning my hips, then my shoulders. I'm trying to the feel is turning my shoulders and leaving my hips still. So then when I get, 3/4 of the way back, from my chest turning, then my hips rotate instead of kind of hips then shoulders. That's exaggerated, but it's a really awkward feel for me. And I felt like my weight hung back on that one because of it. I kind of hit that chunky. Didn't leave much of a ball mark at all. It wasn't one of those range balls, but it was center. It was kind of fat center. Here, I'm not, oh, it's the noodle. This ball actually feels great. That was flushed. That was just a little 3/4 swing, absolutely flushed. I'm trying to knock my flight down also a little bit. A great shot to learn for everyone. Choke down in the club a little bit. And that one piece takeaway I was talking about, laser beam on my hands, pointing from my chest to my hands. I don't want to break the connection. The feel is you swing without letting that laser beam leave your hands. So you're going to basically have a 3/4 backswing, 3/4 follow through. Just a little chest high turn, boom, boom. Very Steve Stricker-like. It's kind of like if your club was attached to your chest. And that should be the feel anyway, but that's kind of how you do it, is you don't break the connection. You keep your club in front of you. And when you hear keep the club in front of you, it's exactly what I've been talking about. When you come back, the club's in front of me. I can turn, and that club is in front of my chest. You see how I've turned and the club is here? That laser pointer, is, if it was here, it's still on my hands. I didn't leave the laser pointer pointing here. It's followed it back. I can't reiterate these things enough. This is probably one of the single most important things, is being able to turn with your chest. And it exactly feels like, whether it's a full swing or one of those little 3/4 chest turns shots, little knockdown shot, it very much feels like your chest is using it. The difference is just that little 3/4 knockdown shot is the laser pointers pointing at my hands. They're connected, they're connected, they're connected, they're connected. So I went to basically as far as I could go, keeping them connected, and then swing. That's kind of the little 3/4 knockdown. The full swing is they stay connected to the same spot, but then there's that little bit of extra hinge to add a little bit of power along with it. So really that's the difference, is the club stays in front of you the whole time on that little chest high knockdown shot, or at least that's the feel of it, is it stays in front of you the whole time. That felt real crispy. I love that shot. I hit a lot of those on the course because I have a naturally high ball flight. So trying to knock it down a little works well. See, they don't leave as obvious of ball marks, but again, this full swing, same kind of feel, just a little bit longer. That would have been a nice 165 yard 7-iron. A real 7-iron too, 36 degrees. I'm blown away at some of the lofts on today's irons. It's absurd. Another one. I'm ever so slightly favoring that heel a little bit, aren't I? Feels good though. Club, I always thought a slight heel miss felt closer to flush than a slight toe miss does. Like, I have a little bit of a toe bias, but a lot of tour players have even more of a toe bias. Like Tommy Fleetwood, Fred Couples, both of those guys hit almost everything off of the toe. I mean, Fred Couples' wedge had a wear mark off the grooves. That chunky monkey, fat and chunky. Caught that one a little heavy. I talked myself right into towing it. Little fat toe, you can see it up there. That was ugly. Clean that up a little. I tend to have a higher or a smaller margin for error, I guess you can say. That wasn't like crazy fat, but it would have looked just fine off of a mat. But on wet grass, it probably would have come up short of. Probably would have only went like 150 instead of 160